I've come to Bournemouth. I'm visiting as much of the region as I can get around in the 30 days of the campaign, and I really support the work of Dorset for Europe. They've been doing a brilliant job supporting Remain here in the county, and so we're chatting to people and trying to think about how people who want us to stay in the EU should be voting in the European elections. And obviously from my jacket you can tell I think they should be voting Green. You know, we're strongly for Remain, but we've also got the issues, the really strong policies to deal with the climate issue, which is coming right up the agenda. And I'd mostly say, please vote for what you think is the best party with the best policies and vote for the representative you want. Tactical voting is a mug's game. You don't know how it will turn out, so I would suggest you just vote for what you think is the best option. I'm the only MEP standing for re-election for a Remain party. I've worked a lot on tax myself, so I want to see some of the work that we've done there to make sure corporates pay their taxes properly actually pushed into law. It's a job half done. I'd like to go and finish that. I've worked a lot on making sure we don't use pesticides too much on our farms so that we're not killing off wildlife. And then on the climate issue, I would like to make sure that we have a carbon tax, so actually the greenest thing to do is also the cheapest thing to do, and make sure we have a frequent flyer levy, and also just basically control the way we travel and the way we use domestic products so that they have the minimum amount of energy. So they're just as good to use, but we're not wasting energy and destroying the climate. I mean, Greens really lead in the Parliament on all sorts of issues, you know, because we're quite a small number of MEPs, we're less than 10%, but we tend to initiate the important laws that change the way we live. So whether it's product standards, making sure we have clean, safe food, whether we treat animals well on farms, protecting wildlife, protecting water quality, protecting whistleblowers, all sorts of this legislation starts with the Greens. And actually when we get to the European Parliament, you can see that the parties that are also standing in this election are quite a lot weaker on those issues than we are. And I wish if people knew more about what we do in the European Parliament, I think Greens would get a much stronger vote. So the better representation we get, the better reporting we get, the higher the vote for the Greens. After the LuxLeaks scandal and the tax scandals, various people who blew the whistle on that were actually threatened with jail, and so we wrote a draft law ourselves. We demanded that the Commission produce law. They didn't. We wrote a draft law. Eventually, under sustained campaigning pressure, they did produce some legislation that's just passed into law. We did a similar thing with conflict minerals legislation. That means that minerals like the sort of metals you have in your phone that come from conflict regions like the Congo, they can't be used to fund war, including child soldiers and the really appalling atrocities. Again, that was something where we did a report in the Parliament as Greens, and then we put pressure on the Commission to bring forward law. So although we don't officially have the right to start the legal process, we as Greens do just use our power to do that. And if other parties and groups wanted to do that, they could. It's just they're not as active as us. Well, I would say the biggest issue is that as MEPs, we're legislators, so we work on the detail of the legislation. If you're an MP, you basically just have a scrutiny function, but we have really complex laws coming to us, like, you know, I work a lot, as I said, on tax law, on financial regulation, and we have to actually work on the detail of that ourselves. So, you know, we can amend law. I've written bits of law, you know, sentences. I've redesigned a whole sort of piece of sustainable finance legislation just at the end of my term, and so you know that's what makes it an amazing job actually. It's very demanding intellectually as well as kind of like a lot of travel, but it's the best job in politics because we are actually lawmakers, unlike Westminster where government has control. And power works differently in different situations, but there's just so many lies told about the European Parliament as a rubber stamp. It's really anything but. And anybody that wants to see that can come and visit and see our work in action. Well, we've got right wing and then we've got the far right. And to me, they're two different things. I mean, the right wing, Julie Girling, for example, who was our MEP, or still our MEP, but not restanding. I've battled with her a lot over how much pesticide we should use on farms or how we should treat farm animals, or, you know, on the tax issue as well. We don't agree. That's the nature of democracy. I'm more on the left, she's more on the right. But beyond that, we have parties who are not interested in using the democratic structures except to destroy them and to forward their own agenda, which is an agenda of hate and division. And so when you see them there in the Parliament, they don't do the legislative work I was talking about, because their whole purpose is to use those resources and that platform to spread hate and fear in this country. And if you vote for the Brexit Party or UKIP, you are just feeding that destructive, divisive politics that is really destroying our country at the moment. Other than vote Green on the 23rd of May? I don't think so.